So Kirk Minahan threw this out recently that he's talked to a couple of sources out there that have said that Tom Brady's first move when he takes over the Raiders is to reach out and gauge Bill Belichick's interest in the head coaching job.
So they were listening to our show?
Kind of feel like we were kicking that around a couple of days ago as the potential.
Well, yeah, guys. I mean, it's a little obvious, right? I mean,
we're taking full credit.
It's not that original of a thought, guys.
You mean to tell me nobody else had that thought?
We're taking full credit. We're first show out.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean,
first
I'm not
show
taking
out
any
the
credit for that.
We're going to do it.
Here's the tough part about that stuff coming out now is Antonio Pierce is your head coach. And everything you do when you first take over, whether you're responsible for something, all right? So if it's the operations, the roster, what have you, could be the border, you've got to take responsibility for then what happens from that point moving forward, and you're setting precedents. So in this case, when he comes in there and this report gets out there, it's like, okay, well then any head coach that ever comes in to be the Las Vegas Raiders, as long as Tom Brady's part of the ownership, is going to be subject to, while they have their job, still someone else reaching out to see if Bill Belichick or the next head coaching candidate is potentially ready. Like, this is the sort of thing where when you take over, you don't want what you're trying to do behind the scenes to become public.
Yeah.
You'd like it to stay behind the scenes.
But how true do you think it is? Or is it, like you said, it's not like it's a military secret to have that thought process. Is it the chance that it isn't true? You
would rather other people speculate rather than saying this is what the first thing Tom Brady's doing.
Right.
Because that comes from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is, like, you would immediately want to come out, make a statement, and say, hey, we're supporting the team. We're excited to see what they can do the rest of this year. You know, this is, however he sees it. But you just don't want to set a precedent that now moving forward, everyone's going to look back to and say, well, he took over and then he was doing this, or he took over and then, like, is anyone ever safe? Because now you're constantly going to have to deal with the speculation that no matter what happens, there's always going to be someone shopping out there for the next best thing, the next best head coach, etc. The other thing is, obviously he's tasked with, I guess, the operations, whatever technically his title is, but he's part of the ownership group, so he can't fire himself, right? I mean, I guess he technically could step away from it, but he's still going to be a part of that organization. And so it's probably better off that he's just looked at this kind of silent partner, minority owner. I mean, Richard Seymour is a part of the group that took over, that invested into the Raiders. And what's interesting is you didn't hear anything really about that until we heard that it was approved. And it was like, oh, by the way, Richard Seymour is part of this group.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I understand he's Tom Brady. He's a huge name. It's hard for him to probably keep secrets, but it would be better off if the strategy wasn't fully out there for all to see, especially considering you're in the middle of a season. It's one thing if this is the off season and you can have these conversations about people's job security and moving on to Bill Belichick. But out of fairness to AP, out of fairness to every head coach that takes that position moving forward, and probably even Bill, like if Bill Belichick, if I'm sitting in his seat, I'm probably thinking to myself, hey, Tom, why don't we wait till maybe the end of the season? Unless you guys make a decision and that job's open, let's not talk about that job being open. It's only fair. I think a lot of coaches who've been around enough probably feel that way and would echo that sentiment.
I just wonder how, like, when things like this happen, how far before things like this surface are they being discussed? Like, Tom Brady isn't kicking into gear because now he's getting the approval. Tom Brady knew he was going to get the approval. At some point, somebody told him, like, it's going to take a little time, but we'll get the approval.
Are you saying there's like a thing like tampering that exists in sports?
I mean, or colluding or whatever it may be. Like, even the same thing with Aaron Rodgers saying, can't wait to play with you again. Like, that one just stands out big time. Like, he was so sure when he said it. Like, when these things start to happen and execution of whatever the next, phases or whatever it is you're going to do, whatever takes place, how long before it gets to the public is it already being discussed? I would be curious to be to know, like, at one point, like, oh, that conversation started, 8-9 months ago. Oh, it started 2 years ago, whatever it may have been. I just don't feel like these types of things that get leaked out when they do and it happens when it happens, is in the moment. Like, boom, now he's got the approval. The group's got the approval. Now here's what's being leaked out about what he's thinking he wants to do. Like, that's it happened before then. It happened before now. It had to have happened before now, I would assume.
I mean, we can speculate, but again, that's where I feel like it's unfair when you're taking over as now part of the organization. It's fair for us to do because that's our job. Like, we kind of have to speculate. We kind of have to read into things and read the tea leaves and give an opinion on it. But as far as the actual operations of what Tom Brady's now doing, it's different. You're held accountable to a certain degree, and everything you do is going to be measured and monitored, and it's going to be done so in looking at it from the prism of the Las Vegas Raiders, because that's who you represent. And this is an organization that's had a hard time finding traction. Maybe unfortunately, their best, era or time where you felt positive about this team was when John Gruden was the head coach. And so you're now trying to kind of recapture that, however that fell apart. And I feel like now it's going to be hard to be able to build up this trust in the team and being able to be a team that competes unless they're able to have more stability with their coaching positions, their front office, everything else that goes along with that.
By the way, the more you hear guys that were on that team like Max Crosby talk about John Gruden, the more you start to get the vibe that he got screwed. Like,
you guys talked about, maybe it was yesterday's show, about Jerry Jones. Maybe it's not even about winning games with Jerry Jones. Maybe it's really about the attention that he's able to garner and building the brand of the Dallas Cowboys and how valuable that has been. They don't win S, and yet it's the most valuable franchise. Why? If I'm Mark Davis, I've had in my lifetime watching my dad run this team. If I'm a Rooney, I've had this moment in my lifetime with my dad running this team that they were the focal point of the National Football League. The Raiders have a tremendous fan base. And maybe it's not about winning right now. Maybe it's purely about moving the needle in terms of the attention that you're able to generate and the value you're able to generate by the people who are associated with what it is that you're doing. And if you bring in a Bill Belichick along with the ownership group having and boasting Tom Brady being a part of it, that's enough to sell hope. That's enough to create intrigue and interest to an already really, really robust fan base. I mean, I think this is just as much a marketing play, a marketing move, even for the league. The league gets to brag about and embrace the fact that one of its greatest players of all time is now on an ownership group of one of the most storied franchises in league history. There's something to be said there. The story can be told there, and it can be monetized. So to me, I feel like sometimes it's just as big a move for what it represents off the field than even what it represents on the field.
You mentioned Jerry Jones, by the way. We should point out we discussed his comments towards the radio host Sean and RJ in Dallas. He doubled down, apparently, talking with Diana Rossini.
We're transitioning off that?
Well, I mean, are we, like, what else do we have on it? He mentioned Jerry Jones, so I figured we were going to get
oh, my bad.
Yeah.
I was just going to say this about Belichick, too. It's always a solid when you're a coach who wants to get back into it, when you have someone, too, that immediately gets his name out there, right? And there's no one who's going to, advocate more for Bill Belichick, be a reference for Bill Belichick than Tom Brady. And so I'm not saying this is necessarily the motivation behind it if those conversations are happening, but it's good when you're on TV, you're out there, and you've already got, there's one team that's going to be interested, right? I mean, Tom Brady's helping create a market for Bill Belichick and a desire, or at least perceived desire for Bill Belichick after going through an offseason where I think we all thought he was going to get a job, and it seemed like there's some hesitation with some organizations because they know what that might bring. That might bring a guy who's going to come in and control the whole thing, and there's people in positions of power that don't want to give up that power. So there's also an element here of this being positive for Bill Belichick and I'm not saying it's necessarily by design, but like an ancillary effect of this would be Bill Belichick's name's back out there for a head coaching job, A, before it's open, but B, and we're 6 weeks into the season, 7 weeks into the season? Like that's another piece of this that, again, maybe not by design, but definitely part of the conversation when it comes to, Tom Brady's involvement in an NFL franchise, but how it may help some of the people that he's been involved with in the past.
Let's just say that it happens, hypothetically. What do you think Robert Kraft's thinking? Like, wait a second, I thought you guys didn't like each other. Like, why couldn't we have figured this out towards the end?
I think that's
in New
one
England?
of them things behind the scenes. Like, no, they Cat's been burying the hatchet.
Yeah, Belichick and Brady seem like they're on great terms now. Like almost them not being like playing the coach-player role was better for their relationship, because it feels like Robert Kraft's kind of on the outside looking in, and those guys have kind of
maybe
mended
only because
fences
that's self, like Q said, it's a family ran business.
Yeah,
it's a family ran business. So Robert Kraft could have been in on this, but if you're going to choose family over, work family, then that's what he did, and that's what he's doing. So he's living with that. I mean, that's not, again, if it were different, I would assume that Robert Kraft would be like, why would you go anywhere else to have ownership? Your value is here. Could you imagine the impact that this move would have on especially right now where currently the New England Patriots are? I mean, they're in the same type of situation. I mean, maybe they have a quarterback, so they're a little bit ahead of Las Vegas, maybe. But I mean, to have that scenario, only thing I would say is that you're not bringing Bill Belichick into that scenario, though. That's the only thing.
Right.
That's not going to happen. So
and we don't know that they're going to. I mean, I think you've got to be open minded if you're Tom Brady too, in the sense that like you just had Josh McDaniels there. You had a front office that kind of matched that. Like you had the New England trust kind of there. Like if Bill Belichick comes back to coach, who's his OC? Would it be Josh McDaniels? I mean,
I would think so.
Why would you think so? Because then now is Mark Davis looking at it like,
I just hired this previously and it didn't work.
And the vibe of it was bad. That's a bad move.
Vance Joseph was the head coach in Denver, and now he's a DC.
Truth.
Yeah.
But did it play out the same way? Like that kind of played out pretty public, that there was a disconnect between Daniels and Daniel. McDaniel? No
McDaniels.
S. Oh, Daniels with S. And the players.
Mike McDaniel's your guy in Miami.
McDaniel with no S.
Yeah, no S.
I just said it before. I'm not sure it's the right fit anyway for Bill Belichick and the time frame he's looking to succeed and win. And if Don Shula's record matters, you're taking over the Raiders job, you're probably going to have to be coaching there 6-7 years. I think in order to be able to surpass Don Shula's win-loss record. Maybe it's 4 or 5. But different challenge if that's your motivation. And obviously if you're talking about a team to go win a Super Bowl, there's a lot of things missing from that roster that I think you need to be competitive consistently week in and week out. So I'm not sure that's the right fit. And that's kind of why I just say like it's good for Bill Belichick though that his name's out there and that there is a potential like thought that they could hire him as well. But I think the last little thing I'll say about the announcement of Tom Brady and getting the minority stake is the way they're setting him up with him having control over operations or overseeing that, however you want to phrase it. It's setting him up to be the majority owner, or at least the face of the group that's going to have the majority stake in it. Because if he's getting intricately involved in the operations of the actual organization, like we know he knows football. We know he knows, what he sees in talent, what he sees in other players, et cetera. We know that. But if he's getting involved with the operations and learning from that standpoint, to me, that's what this is really about. This is really setting up for him eventually to take over as majority owner at some point to put together, more capital to end up buying out Mark Davis, who might turn into like a limited partner or a minority owner, but to give them eventually a majority share of the team. Like I think that's where this is all heading.